Welcome to the MBN Solutions Boss in Data podcast. My name is Robin Huggins. I'm Client Services Director for MBN Solutions, a data talent and people solutions business based in Glasgow, Scotland. We specialise in solving talent problems in the data space by collaborating with a community of practitioners, managers, leaders, academics and enthusiasts. In each episode of our podcast, we take a deeper dive into one of the topics currently challenging the data leaders within our community, with a special guest providing their input based on their background and experience in the data space. This episode, our topic is content analytics. Content analytics, whilst being two small words, packs a tremendous punch in terms of company impact. In essence, it's the ability to understand what content you have, how it's being used, and how it can affect customer and consumer behaviour. Joining me today to discuss the topic in more detail is a data leader with a formidable skill set. Bilingual in English and French, award winner, twice Inspirational Woman of the Year finalist, expert in artificial intelligence, social media and data science, with a side helping of heavy metal drumming, and someone whose thought leadership I've fanboyed over since I first heard her speak publicly at an event a number of years ago. Welcome to the show, Megan Reutin. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I am doing good. Do we have that little pause between us? Is it lagging
A
slightly?
little bit. A little lag. It's okay.
Right, we will get there. Megan, thank you so much. We have been a year in getting together for this particular show, but I'm glad we've made it finally, even with the lag.
Perfect. First and foremost, thanks for inviting me to talk with you today.
You're welcome. You are welcome. And apologies for butchering your surname.
It's all good. Don't worry, it's all good.
Right, here we go. Megan, thanks so much for agreeing to join me today. You and I have known each other for a number of years now, but for the benefit of the audience, can you tell us your story? Where do you come from? What's been your journey in data? Where are you now? Why did you choose to do what you can do?
Sure. So with regards to my story, I originally started out trying to find a way of blending computer engineering, psychology, and French language. I basically just wanted to mash all my interests together and find some sort of role that would enable me to do that. I originally kickstarted my career in web design whilst I was still studying because user experience was and it still is extremely important for me. If you can't get things right for your customers, then you're not doing things right at all. From then on, I moved into Accenture many moons ago, or a few moons ago, where I was part of the technology labs. The best area of Accenture, albeit I'm a little bit biased. And in this area, you were able to explore bleeding edge technologies, build some sort of asset, pilot it with customers. I was really working in uncharted territories, which was actually quite exciting and another passion I discovered I had at the time. And if the pilots, if they worked, then they were rolled out to other areas of Accenture for those areas to implement with their customers. And if it didn't work, then I'd learn from it. Maybe it wasn't the right industry, maybe the technology wasn't mature enough, maybe there was something in the rollout process that needed adapting, and every mistake or fall, as we would call it, you would learn something from, and then you would move on and make the next idea or asset or implementation even better. During that time, I implemented Accenture's first social media project, which way back when was in essence just a tiny little Facebook share. So a tiny little piece of JavaScript that was embedded into a website. But surrounding that, you have the adoption strategy to ensure that the company's customers were able to use it, the customer experience in general, to make sure that the customer journey is seamless and completely streamlined despite adding in that extra step. And then there was the data aspect. What data could we get from it at the time? What can we do with the data? Can the data be blended with any other data sets? How can we use it to personalize or customize that experience even further? So it started with Facebook data, and then there was Twitter, YouTube, forum, the social media explosion. And then very rapidly, I started specializing in developing multilingual social media analytics services for companies, social media strategies, understanding each and every technology that was out there, measurements, frameworks, and everything else that entailed. From then, I started trying to see, okay, well, this is nice, but how do I blend this data with other internal and external data, and then rapidly moved through analytic strategies, including data governance, through AI, including ethical AI, which I'm also super passionate about. Um, I then decided that I would leave consulting and go into industry, which was an absolutely amazing change. I'm now with Grunenthal, which is a pharmaceutical company headquartered in Germany, whose ethos is to seek a world free of pain. And that ethos and the innovative mindset that the company has really resonate with me, which is one of the reasons that I made that change. Um, I'm now the global head of data science and strategy, which means that whilst I have one foot firmly in strategy, well, data, strategy, and everything that surrounds that I love, I have the other foot steeped in innovation, which allows me to unleash my creative side. Um, I absolutely love what we're working on at the minute as well, and that's everything from content analytics that you mentioned through Omniverse to generative AI, and I can't wait to see where we're going to take this. I'm also on the steering board, just a little shout out in terms of the Women into Tech, which is a joint venture
Yes.
between Napier University, based in Edinburgh, and Stirling University, funded by Skills Development Scotland. And what they were looking to do was identify and combat the challenges that females face at all ages when they're looking to go into a career in STEM, but specifically technology. Um, there should be equal opportunities for everyone in every career, but it's not always the case. And it resonates even more for me now because I have a little daughter who's in school, so I spend time trying to blitz the gender stereotypes and also encourage anything and everything that's STEM related from science to technology. And lastly, one other thing that I also feel I'm quite lucky to be able to get into is presenting occasionally at conferences, and I get to be the guest speaker sometimes in universities, which is also something I feel is incredibly important.
And that's where our wee journey began, because I heard you speaking many moons ago when you were with Accenture at the University of Edinburgh. You were speaking on the ethical use of AI, and I was like, wow, a sensible person who says things I can understand. And we became friends ever since. Thank you so much, Megan. Totally appreciate it. Now, taking it back, content analytics, to get us up and running, how would you define content
So,
analytics?
content analytics for me, in a nutshell, is how or what ability you have to be able to analyze your content. So that means what content is being used, how is it being used, how much of it is being reused. Are you adopting that 80-20 strategy in companies that companies sometimes tended to do? Who's viewing the content? Is it resonating? Are there channels where certain types of content are resonating better than others, and maybe for specific audience segments? The main goal in all of this is to ensure that there is a slick, streamlined, and a personalized experience for customers, allowing us to better personalize the experience further.
Okay, and why do you believe that content analytics is important and relevant to today's data leader?
So it's incredibly important because it's a little like pre-social media, where companies used to have a megaphone and they would shout out about their brands, and um, they felt like the brand messages that they were trying to convey, that was it, that was the be all and the end all. Messaging and content was created as par for the course, and that was basically it. It's super simplistic, but there was no expectation of, of customers having a voice, let alone being able to voice it anywhere. Social media has ensured that no matter whether it's B2B, B2C, B2B2C, that some sort of two-way dialogue is possible at each and every step along the way. And it was sorely needed. I mean, how can you run a company without listening to or knowing your customers?
We've spoken recently about modular content, and you described it as capitalizing upon what you already had. Can you expand? What is it? What's it for? And why should data leaders be aware of this?
Sure. It's basically breaking your content down to the smallest item possible called modules, and then being able to take each and every one of these modules in a variety of combinations across a variety of channels. It's great because it encourages content reuse, which helps minimize content production costs. But the key is being able to ensure being able to ensure that all content is tagged appropriately, so you can track what's been used, where it's been used across the business, and see where there are opportunities to improve upon how we're doing things currently.
Okay. And is this something that you believe that if organisations become more efficient, better at, it will help the overall direction of travel of the
Most
business? Why is this so
most
important?
definitely, most definitely, you can reduce costs, you can improve customer experience, so most definitely it's an area that companies should be investing in if they aren't already doing so.
But it starts off with, on a granular level, understanding not only the content but also the customer. Because if you don't have a very clear understanding of both, then you can't go into the kind of level of detail that's required in order to be able to reuse the content further down the line.
So you definitely need both for sure, but you need to start somewhere. You might not necessarily have that granular view of the consumer, but you or the customer, but you can absolutely understand what content resonates with them or what purely through the content that you're using with them in each of the different touch points that you have with them. So you don't necessarily have to have a super granular approach in terms of content and customers to begin with. But the goal would definitely be to get that way. And with content, it's the same. Content used to be huge, big documents, large images, um, and now being able to get to that granular approach, it's incredibly important.
Okay. What impact have recent developments like the global COVID pandemic had on the importance of content analytics and or modular content? What have we learned?
So we're all familiar with the phrase that content is king. It's always been important, whether it's visual or verbal or written content. The pandemic hasn't changed this at all. But what has changed is the way in which it's been used and the channels through which it's been used. We all know that during the pandemic, everyone was on their computers, and the use of digital content, the amount it was consumed and the amount of content that was being created definitely rose. Um, what we have seen, on the other hand, at least within our industry, is the healthcare practitioners who were mainly face to face with a little bit of digital before. They don't want all those face to face visits again. Yes, they want to keep some, but they don't want to go down that route of having purely face to face. And some of them have actually kept the pandemic or the pandemic restrictions in place that they put. So, for example, they were only allowed to see a certain amount of people per day, per week, per month. And the HCPs actually prefer it that way. And they prefer consuming digital content as well. So it only emphasizes the preference for digital usage, or at least a more blended approach than what we had prior to the pandemic. What the pandemic has changed, though, in terms of content, and this is a great thing, is it's challenged businesses to really think about their content production and how to really make themselves stand out from the crowd. It's forced companies to rethink how they're doing things, tailoring their customer journeys with great, excellent, brilliant content. Some of it is modular, but this is a new normal, and this is absolutely par for the course going forward.
Okay. Supplementary question. Don't mean to
It's all
put you
good.
on the spot, but if you can, are there any examples out there that you could use to illustrate what really, really good looks like without giving away any trade secrets, obviously?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's always my go-to companies are not necessarily within the same industry. I absolutely love CPG, so consumer goods industries. So things like Lego or Disney, their analytics are always really, really good. Um, and so I'm convinced, fairly convinced, that they have modular content behind the scenes as well because of how they're able to um, target their specific audience segments with the content that they're producing.
Okay. If I were a data leader completely in the dark about the concepts within content analytics, but interested in learning more, where would be a good
So I
start point?
definitely think there's been some really good theoretical work done in each of the larger consulting companies. So that would definitely be my first stop. The companies that I mentioned, I would also have a look at too and use that to build a foundation of knowledge around content analytics in the first place, before then trying to research anything that's a little bit more advanced.
And internally, um, if a data leader, for example, is C-suite data leader, what teams within the business would have to work in unison or in tandem in order to allow this strategy to be executed properly?
So it depends how the business is set up. Um, Definitely I would have said that whoever guards their data. So is that BI? Is that IT? Is it within a data governance framework or operating model that they have? So whoever is whoever guards their data first and
Yeah,
foremost is what I would say. Um, the business itself, so the internal customers within the companies who would like access to those sorts of analytics. So maybe the marketing team, for example, wants to
marketing
understand
team, yeah.
how their messages are resonating. Maybe there's a new product that's been launched. Say Lego, for example, launches a new Lego box, and it's something really really cool, and they want to understand how it's resonating with their specific target audience. Um, Maybe there's as well as the teams that are working on new types of services. Maybe in terms of customer services, that's also a different area.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I would say it's not, there's no hard or fast rule, and it's not one glove fits all
mm,
for each and every company.
yeah.
But there does need to be a tag team effort behind the scenes on ensuring that this works.
Breaking down content analytics and looking at content production, performance, ROI, and quality, which, if any, are the most important? Where would a data leader start if trying to implement just one of these approaches?
So what I would say is that each and every one of the items that you've just mentioned are tied together with data. Not just data in general. It needs to be good quality, wholesome, completely unbiased data. For companies that don't have, whether it's per performance or return of investment analytics in place, I would tend to start there. If all of the analytics that you've mentioned are in place, but individuals are unsure how to build out the content analytics part, I would say first and foremost, make sure that the content's tagged. Make sure that it's tagged consistently across each of the channels, but start simple. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. You don't need to have this big bang approach. You start simple and you build things out. So you could start from content usage metrics on content that's already been produced. Um, to give internal customers just some information or some visibility on what's been used and how it's been used before even trying to think of anything that's a little bit more intricate.
So, from your experience, and that's a couple of times you've mentioned the importance
Yes.
of tagging. In your experience, has that been something that perhaps organisations have maybe skipped by or not been as precise with as they could have, which then leads to problems further down the
Yes,
process line?
most definitely. So there's a few things here. Um, First of all, uh, will your tagging that you're looking to apply, will it give you enough detail behind the scenes? uh, once you've broken down the individual tag itself. Um, is it being enforced? Is it being used on all the content? Is it obligatory? Maybe, maybe not.
Right.
I've seen examples in a previous life where yeah, so content was tagged, but the tag wasn't used consistently. So sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't there, sometimes it had a mixture of different things. And it's really, really hard to analyze something that isn't consistent. It's near impossible. So ensuring that that's done from the get-go is probably first and foremost where I would start. But mapping out. So first of all, you have all your different systems that you have in place, and you have that architecture. But mapping out how your content flows through that will help you see
Right.
if there's any gaps.
From an organisational perspective, what barriers could be faced when trying to implement a content analytics strategy? What challenges have you overcome personally?
So I know that you mentioned the tagging. That's definitely the first. That's definitely the first hurdle. But I think over and above, once the tagging is in place, making sure that making sure that everyone understands the value of why there should be a tagging process in place can also be a little bit of a hurdle. But it can actually also be fairly easily overcome with a little bit of training. Not everyone can see the value, first off, and even when it's explained to them, they don't necessarily understand. But if you have something that is visual that can really explain the benefit and people can see the value and why there should be that tagging system in the first place, that helps.
And is it something that, with an awful lot of work within data science, I've often heard leaders suggesting that the technology aspect's not the most important aspect, the human aspect is the most important aspect. So explaining to people, getting their buy-in, almost winning hearts and minds very early in the journey will allow this to happen a lot more effectively than not. So there's a role here of the almost the evangelist in terms of the way that the way that what you've got to
Most
operate.
definitely, most definitely. But I also think that having different areas of the business aligned and within the process from the get-go is also helpful. It's one thing trying to put in place technologies, trying to put in place tagging, and then saying, here we go. It's a whole other thing, bringing people into the journey from the get-go, helping understand why we need it, and then co-creating potentially even the tag in the first place, so that then those individual people can start taking that back to their departments and evangelizing why we need that in the first place. But yeah, no, definitely, it's both a technology and a people aspect.
Looking into the future for a minute, what developments within content analytics do you think are going to have the biggest impact over the next few years?
So I think fairly rapidly, not even as far ahead as the next few years. AI, generative AI, content analytics, next best action. I think they're going to provide some really really spectacular options. One thing that happened during the pandemic was the co-creation of ideas and inventions across companies and across industries. What I would love to see is that continue, but also have that impact on content. I mean, we saw partnerships we didn't ever think we would see on the cards emerge, and I would love
Yeah.
to see a similar sort of thing happen across the industry for content. But I think the biggest impact for me will definitely be generative AI content related capabilities. We've seen more recently ChatGPT, obviously, but GPT-4 has image creation within it. Messaging platforms such as Viber, they have their own generative art capabilities. There's a whole plethora of competition or competitors for generative image. Firefly and Midjourney, for example, just to name but a few. I was also trying out some generative AI myself fairly recently to try and generate some sort of professional looking photo. The output was hilarious. I didn't use it in the end, but it was incredibly funny. Um,
It should have been used. The pirate pictures should
no,
have been used.
so it definitely wasn't used, but yeah, you're right. Maybe maybe I should create an article on it, and use it that way. Um,
Yeah, it's
but I think I in essence I can't wait to see where we're going to land. I think that generative AI and content is everything's going to merge. Hopefully this will mean that we can create our own content from a company perspective at a fraction of the cost, which means that we can
yeah.
optimize our content, that our customers will love the content, whilst also really setting us aside from the crowd. It goes without saying that this would all be done, as we mentioned earlier, entirely ethically and compliantly, which cannot be an afterthought in the creation of any technological solution.
Well, I'm just happy that we've finally been able to collaborate after all these time, all these years, and I'm hoping that somebody in here tags this content appropriately because I wouldn't know how to do that, mate. Um, Final thoughts, Megan. If you could jump in the Wayback Machine and speak to yourself 5 years ago, what advice, based on what you know now, particularly around the topic of content analytics, would you
I
give
would
yourself?
say tag now, please. Absolutely tag and make sure things are consistent. But apart from that, to be super super cheesy in terms of my final thoughts, content is absolutely king. But there'll be no castle, let alone any sort of throne, unless there's that effective data tagging system in place for content analytics. But obviously, it goes without saying that well-constructed data of great quality, it really is the foundation to all, and without that, there's nothing.
Get great data, tag early, tag often. Yeah. Okay, Megan, thank you so much again for taking the time to speak with me today. I'm delighted that we
Thanks,
finally
Rob.
got to do this. Thanks for sharing your passion, your knowledge, and your expertise in the theme of content analytics. I hope you, dear listener, have enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. Please do look out for the other episodes in this podcast series where I'm joined by other special guests discussing topics relevant to today's bosses in data. Visit www.mbnsolutions.com for resources like our Data Salary Survey 2022, to watch recordings of our latest data meetup events, or to download our white papers, research and thought leadership. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram and Twitter for the latest news, views, opinions and, of course, hottest opportunities in the data space. Megan, any final words?
Just thank you and have a good day.
You too. Thanks very
Thanks.
much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.